Hey everyone, what's up? It's Haley and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be doing my first ever book review and it is going to be on A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. SCHWAB. So I'm really excited because I am working on my annotation system. As you can see, I tabbed up the crap out of this book and I also wrote notes and highlighted, and I feel like I got a lot out of this book. So the way that I kind of wanted to make sure that I was, my annotation system for this worked is to film a book review. And I know a lot of people have read this and a lot of people love it, so I wanted to give my thoughts. But before I get started, please subscribe if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and let me know if you've read this book and what you think about it. So a lot of book reviews kind of carry the format of starting out with a non-spoilery discussion and then a spoilery discussion, and this is very much going to be the same. The meat of this video is going to be spoilery just because everything that I say I really want to be able to back up with examples from the book. So, A Darker Shade of Magic is about two characters, Kel and Lila. Kel is a man of about 21 years old who grew up in a London that is teeming with magic, and he was raised by the king and queen of this world. He is unique in that he has the ability to travel between these parallel Londons, after which he is named based on the amount of magic they have and using colors. So the London that he grew up in is Red London. Grey London is very much like our own, in which magic is more of a rumor or even a possibility to some. And then there is White and Black London. So Kel has actually never traveled to Black London because they once had magic, but it consumed them, and White London is very much traveling in that direction in which their magic is consuming them. So one day Kel happens upon this talisman that is actually connected to Black London, and possessing this is illegal, so it makes him the target of a bunch of different people, and he ends up fleeing to Grey London. There he runs into Lila, who is a pickpocket and a thief that travels around the streets of London. She's stubborn, she's selfish, and she's very strong of will, but her really only main goal is to earn enough money to one day buy a boat so that she can sail off as a pirate and be out on adventure. When Kel and Lila run into each other, Lila takes this talisman without knowing what it is, and after tracking her down, Lila agrees to give Kel back the talisman so long as she can accompany him on his journey to return this dangerous stone to Black London. So anyone who has read a Victoria SCHWAB book, I think, is familiar with the kind of writing she has. It's very lush and descriptive, I think, without being too conceited and contrived. I think it's not overly complicated, which in a way makes her adult books, I think, the kind of books that might be really good for people who are trying to dip their toes in the water of adult fantasy. So if you are mostly a YA reader, but you want to get more into adult books, I would definitely recommend checking out her more fantasy and sci-fi adult novels, just because they're fairly easy to follow with still being really beautiful in the way that they're written. Now, there are some things that I had issues with, and I'll get more into that in my spoilery discussion of this book, but overall I feel like it was a really solid first book in a trilogy. I know that there are two more, so I wasn't really expecting, to have a ton of world building and magic and everything like that, but I really liked the story. Honestly, the only thing I knew about it going into it was that there were these different Londons and they had different levels of magic, but I didn't know where the story was going to take me. So I really enjoyed it, but again, there were some things that I had issues with, so I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, though it's probably more of a 3.75 out of 5 stars. And for that reason, I am really excited to continue the series, but it wasn't my favorite. Now, I am going to be getting into my more spoilery discussion of this book, so if you haven't read it and you don't want to know anything that happens, then I'd recommend signing off now. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll choose to subscribe. So for those of you who have read the book or don't care if you know any details about it, I want to focus a little more in on her writing, because one thing that I find she does that's really great is that Victoria SCHWAB takes small details from earlier in the book that she kind of glosses over, and they don't seem very important at the time, and then she uses them again later in the book to kind of that they become very important to what is happening in the story. And a couple examples of that are with Lila's eyes. She has 2 slightly different colored brown eyes, and at first Kel brings it up, but he's kind of in this like weakened, injured state, so I didn't really think much of it when it first came up, but then later you find out that she actually has a glass eye, which kind of implies that she might be an Antari, like Kel, which I thought was just like a really interesting thing. Like, I expected her to have magic, but I didn't expect her to actually be an Antari, so that was kind of fun. And then the second example of that is when Lila first has the talisman and she creates kind of this second Kel from it, and as she's trying to get rid of it, this magical Kel kind of gets really angry and is about to attack her, and then Victoria Schwab uses that detail again when Kel is fighting one of the Dane twins later on in the book. So I thought that was such a small detail, and it was cool. It was a cool way to kind of bring everything together. So as I was annotating this, I used different colors. I'm still not totally sold on the way that I did this, but I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of bright, but I used orange tabs for when I had like questions on what was going on, and for the most part they were addressed in the story. Like, there wasn't really a ton that I was left still questioning, and I think anything that was left might be something that's going to be addressed in the next 2 books. But there was one part that really confused me, and it never was really tied up in the end. That was, so it happened right after Kel comes across the stone from Black London, and he is trying to escape by traveling to Grey London, and so he's trying to travel, and his magic kind of fails him, and he has to essentially beg it to take him to Grey London. And the way that it's written in the story makes it seem like that's something that's never happened before and that shouldn't happen. And I think as readers we can probably deduce that it is because he is injured and he's probably weakened from that, but it's never really explicitly said, and I think I kind of would have liked a better explanation of that. So I was really confused. I got kind of scared. I was like, oh no, is Kel losing his magic? But it was just a small detail, something that I wanted addressed a little more, but wasn't. As far as world building goes, that's kind of where I was left wanting more. I mean, I think at the surface we know about the 4 different Londons. We know that they have different magical abilities, and we kind of get a glimpse into their different governing bodies, but other than that, we really don't know too much. And I think this world is so rich and has so much potential to be really magical, but we just don't get a lot in this book. So, you know, again, it's the first in the series. I hope it's addressed more, but I did want more from that. And the same goes for the magic system. As far as London goes, we know that the magic system really has to do with elemental magic. There are those moments where Kel has that, it's like a box where there are different pieces from each of the elements. There's, you know, there's wind, there's water, there's earth, there's fire, and there's bone. And the kids kind of use it as a way to see which of the elements they can control and to kind of practice controlling different elements. But I think where I was kind of left with more questions is how rare it was for people not to have magic, like Kel's kind of adopted brother Rye, and also, you know, was it typical of people to really only be able to control 1 or 2 of the elements, or was it more common for people to be able to control all of them? And also, was it something that could be taught? So, you know, there is this scene where Kel is having lessons with Rye, and so I was kind of wondering if, you know, magic was something that could be learned. It just had to be cultivated. So, I don't know. I think that's definitely going to be something that is expanded on in the next books, as are most of my issues with this one, but I wanted more magic. Like, I felt like it was so, again, at the surface, and I really didn't understand their system quite as much as I wanted to. Now, I want to touch a little bit more on the characters because I actually really did like them in this book. I think there were some issues I had as far as kind of their background stories, but other than that, I think they were really fun to read about. You know, Kel is kind of that closed book magician. Like, he doesn't really emote very much, it seems like, unless he's frowning, and he's pretty secretive and tortured, and he has this attitude that though he was raised by the King and Queen of Red London, he doesn't consider them to be really his family because he doesn't remember his past. He doesn't know who his parents are. The only person he really considers to be family is Rye, who is the King and Queen's son. And this at times was kind of frustrating to me because the way that the king and queen are written, you know, we don't see a lot of them, but it seems like, you know, they probably tried to give him as much as they could, but he just doesn't, you know, at first he just really doesn't appreciate them, and that's kind of frustrating to me. But I think it's good to see his growth throughout the book with his attitudes towards the king and queen. And then as far as Lila goes, you know, like I said, she's really stubborn and selfish, and she's very strong-willed. I think she's a very fun character, but again, she's one of those characters with a tortured past. You know, her mom died and her dad was kind of a grade A, you know, and so that kind of really affects how she acts and how she carries herself on the streets. And with Kel, she's grown this really tough skin, and it has a lot to do with the people that were in her life beforehand. So as far as Kel and Lila go, their relationship, their romantic relationship, isn't something I'm completely sold on. You know, on the one hand, their romance was, the scenes that showed it were very few and far between, which I was very grateful for because I didn't feel like it took away from the story. But I don't necessarily feel like they have a ton of chemistry. Like, I don't know if I love it. I could in the next couple of books, but as of right now, I don't love it and I don't hate it. But as a team, I really enjoy their interactions. I think they have great rapport. I love Lila's like sassy comebacks to Kel. I thought they kind of offered a really nice comic relief to this kind of quest that they have to return the talisman. So I thought that was really fun. And then too, as a team, I feel like they contributed to each other's character growth. You know, like I said at the beginning, Kel does not understand that though the king and queen aren't his parents by blood, they did do a lot to raise him. And Lila is really quick to point this out to him. And one of my favorite parts of this book was towards the end. Let me find it here. Okay, so there's a part where Kel and Rye are talking, and Kel says, "What sons our parents have?" And that was really the first time that Kel said our parents, and I put a pink tab because it just made my heart happy. It made me smile, and I was so happy that he finally got to that point. So I think a lot of that has to do with Lila kind of getting on him for that. And then too with Kel kind of shows Lila that she has other people in her life that she can care for, which I think is, you know, again, a really big piece of character growth for her in this book. I'm not sure how they're going to be in the next books, if their characters are going to stay consistent. I know some people kind of have issues with the way Lila develops, so I'm a little nervous to see that, but in this book in particular, I like them both. I like their interactions, and I think they're a great team. Now, I kind of want to touch a little bit more on Rye because we don't get enough time with Rye. You know, we know he's this really charming prince with kind of little magic ability in Red London, but he's well loved by the people, and he's well loved by Kel. But other than that, we don't know a lot. And so the scene where he kind of dies, I think it was almost meant to be this like very emotional thing that happened because it made Kel so emotional. But for me, I didn't care because I didn't feel like I knew Rye enough. You know, his death didn't really make me feel one way or the other. And then I also want to talk about the Dane twins because so we know very little about them as well. We know that they took the throne in White London, and we know that they are just evil. They are just evil. We don't know their backstory. We don't know how they came to be this way. We just know that they exist in a world that is completely being consumed by magic, and they want power. But they don't just want power in White London. They want power in all of the Londons. And I kind of appreciate the fact that we don't know anything else about them except for these details, because I think a lot of times nowadays authors try to kind of make you empathetic towards the antagonists. And in this book, the Dane twins, they're just evil for the sake of being evil. We don't know why or how, and it's kind of fun to just have characters that are just like bad for no reason. I just want to end with a couple quotes that I really liked from this story because I thought that there were so many things that like really made me think. So one of them, of course, is kind of the famous Lila quote, and it is where she says, "I'd rather die on adventure than live standing still." And I loved that. I thought that was very fitting of her character to say. Like, I thought that really embodied her motivations. So that was one thing that really, really left me feeling like, you know, I I liked that. I liked it a lot. And then another quote that kind of made me think was actually said by Holland, and it was, "Hesitation is the death of advantage." And while you kind of get this bad, like not really, Holland is a very confusing character in that he does evil things, but he does them kind of because he has to, not because he wants to. But I thought that quote was really, really interesting because it made me think about, you know, what I want to do with my life. Like, it kind of sent me on a philosophical spiral for some reason, but I don't know, I liked that quote. So that concludes my wrap up for A Darker Shade of Magic. I hope you enjoyed this book discussion. Again, let me know if you read it. Let me know what else you like to see in book talks. I've kind of tried to include all of the different elements of a story and what I liked and didn't like about it. So yeah, let me know if you've read this book. Again, I hope you'll choose to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!